Hello and welcome back to the Petite Plot. Today we'll be emptying the Hotbin and mowing the lawn for the first time this year. And I'll update you on a few changes in the house. And also an update on how Heidi is doing.
Why are you wet? Why?
I'm up early today. And the reason for that is there's blue sky and you have to make the most of it. Sun hasn't quite risen over the garage roof, but we get a little bit of sunshine in the garden in the morning. Time for a cup of tea and then we'll get going. Before I start with the Hotbin, I just wanted to say thank you to the lady who commented that this little mushroom house is called a Toad Abode, which is adorable, and I love that, so I'm really grateful for you letting me know. I won't therefore fill it full of twigs and things for bugs. I'll leave it as is so a toad can get in there and, if needed, spend the night. It does make me want to get more of these though, so I can encourage more toads, because we do have toads coming in and out of the garden all the time. Okay, let's get down to the compost corner. The aim today is to remove maybe half of the bin, and it will go into a compost bin behind me there, the one in the corner. The one to the left of it we made last year using an old garden bench, one of those sort of lilo type garden benches, and we chopped it up because it had rotted, the legs had gone, so it was either take it to the tip or make something out of it. So of course my idea was, oh, that could make a nice compost bin. And that's what we did. So that is where I keep the finished compost, the compost that's ready to go onto the beds and use for sowing seeds. Now this area of the garden was a little bit useless previously. It's a bit of a strange shape and it's right in the corner of the garden, sandwiched between fences for the neighbours and the backs of two garages. So there wasn't really anything you could use this area for. It wasn't great for putting any plants in because the light levels just aren't there. So our idea was, let's put a nice big shed down there and I can put all my compost. And the issue with that is that we had to dig a hell of a lot of soil out of this area. You can see the soil level because where the compost bays are, the two wooden ones, that's the level of where the soil used to be. And just showing you here the door of the compost bin, the slugs, worms, flies that have been making it a home over the winter period. So now down here I have two compost bays behind me and the Hotbin Mini. And my process is, with the Hotbin Mini, I put all of my vegetable waste, plant matter, paper, cardboard in the Hotbin Mini. And then in summer it might be about 3 months and I can empty some out. Over winter, it's generally about 6-7 months before I will empty anything out. The technique here is that you use the stirrer that they provide and take out the centre portion, leaving the sides in position so that the top layers don't fall through on you. Sometimes that does happen though. So you start with the centre and eventually you move out to the sides, and then the top part will either stay where it is or it will fall down. So we'll see what happens with this one. And what I'll do here is everything I'm taking out of the hot bin will go into the compost bay behind me in the corner. And I'll leave it there to continue to break down for maybe another 3-4 months. And then it will be moved from there into the bay to the left of it, which is the finished compost. And that's ready to go onto the beds or to use for seed sowing. So you might think this is a little bit of a long process to get compost, and why don't I just put it straight into one of the bays behind me, in the wooden bays? The issue there is that it does take such a long time to break down that I'd be waiting for ages. So this process I find is much quicker. It allows me to get compost a lot quicker than it would had I just put everything into a cold compost bin. And I quite enjoy the process. This is the most efficient use of space I've found to create compost in the quickest period of time. The trick, of course, to get your compost to break down nicely with the right composition is to make sure that you've got dry matter, browns as it's known, and the green matter, because you don't want it to be too wet and soggy, and that's what you'll get if you just literally have grass clippings and just drop them all in without mixing it with any paper or cardboard. You'll just end up with a big clump of smelly, nasty grass. It won't be doing anything apart from making a lovely smell. What I've realised here is that my plastic has got a big hole in it, so I'm having to get rid of that and replace it with some cardboard, which is fine because the cardboard can be used anyway in the compost. So the Hotbin Mini itself has the lid area, which is insulated and airtight, designed to retain the heat and manage the odours. It's got a temperature gauge in there and a release valve to manage the moisture and the steam. There's a charcoal filter which helps minimise any smells, so you get no smells whatsoever. Then you have the bin section itself that goes all the way down to the base plate, and the base plate has got lots of holes in it to allow any liquids to go into a sort of chamber at the bottom, and you'll see a little blue screw top. And that is where you empty the liquid, which I like to do every few days, especially when you have grass in there. You will get a lot of liquid coming through, and you don't want it to get too full down there that it stops airflow, because you do need airflow coming in through the vent in the centre, just to the left of the blue screw top. And that's where the air comes in through the compost and then it comes out the top. There is a little bit of maintenance involved in having a Hotbin Mini, but it's well worth it in the end. I do clean it out probably once a year, and that will be in the summertime, so I can just let it dry out on the grass Over the winter, the hotbin does run cold. It's probably around 10 degrees. But the best way to get the hotbin to get back up to temperature for me is to add grass. So during the summer, we're mowing once every 1 to 2 weeks, and I can put maybe half of the grass mowings in there. The other half might have to go into the compost bay in the corner there. But either way, it helps both bins really heat up. It's like a rocket fuel for the hotbin. You ideally will have a very good mix of the green and brown waste. I like to put probably about 50% of green, 50% of brown. I don't think that's the equation that they give you, that the hotbin manufacturers say you need, but that's what works for me. Otherwise it just becomes too wet, and when it becomes wet it can become anaerobic and be a bit smelly. So looking in here, you'll see I've got a mix of paper, greens, and I've got things like leaves, trimmings from the garden. Over winter, obviously plants have been dying off and I haven't cut them down until recently, so that's what's gone in there. It's full of bugs. The bug life is amazing. Once it's up to temperature, they won't be able to live in there. It's way too hot. It can get up to 50, 60 degrees. So I'm just giving it a little bit of a stir there, and I'm going to add lots of cardboard here. Because the hotbin seems to be a little bit on the wet side, I want to make sure I've got lots of brown in there to mop it all up. This is an extremely good exercise for your arms. I specifically left these flowers to dry out before putting them into the hotbin, and that's again a measure to stop too much liquid going in there, because we don't want a stagnant hotbin. We want it to be a little bit on the dry side. This is my little mini shed at the side of the house, where I keep all of my bits and pieces. I keep a little stash of shredded paper, cardboard from those Amazon deliveries, spider-free gloves, and I do have some old garlic hanging up there which I need to get rid of because it wasn't good for anything. But I'm not very good at throwing things away when they're possibly viable, but they're not, they're too small. I have 2 bags of shredded paper here. Thank you for the junk mail, royal mail, and also where I work we get lots of post that gets scanned in, and then we don't need the post any longer, so I shred it all up and I use it. It's a small shed, so I do need to keep it tidy. And it's got a little bit dusty in here. Dusty, cobwebby, spiders over the winter time. And it needs a little bit of a clear out. The good thing is, all of this stuff is stuff you can put into your compost. And here I've got lots of clippings from the garden that I'm allowing to dry out to use as browns for my compost bin. I'm just checking to see how dry it is. It's nearly there. Now on to the first mow of the year. We were trying to hold off because, as Monty Don says, you shouldn't really do it until about second week of March. However, we have a dog who goes to the toilet in the garden, and she's only a small dog, so this was becoming a bit of a forest for our small dog. And it does make collecting waste a little bit more difficult, so we decided to give it a mow on quite a high level, so we weren't taking too much off the top, but enough that it was easier to handle for a small dog. Plus she'd get very wet walking through this grass. Very satisfying cutting grass, especially when you can get the stripes. And of course, the really good benefit of cutting the grass is that it's going to go into the hot bin, which will really ramp up the temperature. As I say, it's currently sat at around 10 degrees in the hot bin. I'd expect at least 20-30 degrees once I've added some grass. And what a lovely day to mow the lawn. The sun came out, stayed out all day pretty much. And of course we had to wait until there had been enough time since the last rainfall to allow us to even stand on the grass, because we are on clay soil, and so it does feel rather spongy underfoot, quite squelchy at times. So we have to wait until we've had it dry enough for long enough to be able to get on here. And now to get the Hotbin up to temperature, adding lots and lots of nitrogen rich grass. This will compost down very quickly, but you do need to add almost equal amounts of shredded paper or cardboard to stop it from being too wet. It's not the easiest way to mix it. Normally I would put it in a bucket and then mix everything in the bucket, then empty the bucket into the Hotbin. But my bucket is full. The design for the garden is based on rounded circular features in the main. The lawn is mostly curved, the patio is curved, and it's bound gravel that we've made that with in a circular design. And the bound gravel goes from the patio all the way through to the back gate, and the rest is normal gravel. And we have a walkway going all the way round the garden, so there are no direct routes. You walk around the edge of the garden to get to where you need to be. So you take yourself on a little journey. There'll be quite a lot of grass going into the Hotbin today. And if we have too much and we can't put it in the Hotbin, I will put it into the second compost bay, which will just help that break down as well. The most important thing is to make sure that you've got enough shredded paper or cardboard in there. Don't skimp on that. And the company do say that you only need to mix the bit that you've just put in. You don't need to mix the entire bin. I think that's really down to personal choice, but they say to leave the bit at the bottom that's already rotting down as is and only mix the bit that you've just put in there. Luckily the grass isn't too wet that we can allow Heidi back on there. Otherwise you get a green dog who then has to have a bath. And she hates those. We went on a dog walk and I got distracted by the large birds circling. I can't quite tell what they are, but we do have kites quite regularly. And now to something very exciting. We had a visitor. We had a hole made in the wall in the living room. And we had our air conditioning put in the living room. We do have this upstairs in the bedroom already. However, in a new build, it's like an oven and we needed to have some aircon downstairs. It was unbearable otherwise. And this really is going to be a huge benefit this summer. We can actually sit in the living room in summer with the sun streaming in on us without boiling to death. And now just to mention the red wall that we were painting. It took a fair few coats to get this covered. But we got there and it's now done and it's looking brilliant. It goes really, really well against the wooden furniture. And it feels very cozy in the room now. So we're really, really happy with that. In this image, you can still see a bit of green above the curtain pole. However, that is all now red. And now to an update on Heidi's condition. As I've mentioned before, she has mitral valve disease, but also keeps suffering from bouts of pancreatitis. This time she sought solace in the downstairs toilet. I believe this is because perhaps the floor feels cool and it's quite nice for her to lie there. She seemed to be in a medium amount of distress this time. It wasn't as bad as it has been, but you can see her breathing has increased, and it's difficult to know whether this initially is due to her heart or whether this is due to pain from pancreatitis. So it is a guessing game quite often as to what we need to do for her. We gave her a gabapentin tablet, and this is like an anti-anxiety but also pain relief, specifically pain relief that helps with pancreatitis. So she had that tablet, slept for a good few hours, and then all of a sudden she jumped up and wanted to play as if nothing had happened. Of course we do have to manage food, but she's extremely picky and she won't eat the things that are good for her. So we manage that as best we can, trying to juggle the right food for mitral valve disease and also pancreatitis. But eventually she feels better, and by the following morning we went for a walk and she was quite well. So we just keep our fingers crossed each day. Thank you for joining us at the Petite Plot, and I hope to see you next week.